All right, good morning, everybody. Looks like we got 10:30. Looks like we've got everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. Work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to the discussion, but there's generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings held twice monthly. We've got 4 items on the agenda. First is our agenda review, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to our county manager, Don Boone.
Chair Carrillo, members of the board, good morning. Just want to mention, and there was an email that was sent out, but March 12th, we have suggested canceling that meeting. So that would mean that we have the daytime work session on the 19th and then the evening meeting on the 26th as our March meetings. And then as has been the case, the legislative update will be one of those constant agenda items as we go through the legislative session. We do have some upcoming daytime items on April 2nd regarding the housing inventory project that Alyssa's been working on, and as well as the economic opportunities analysis. So I'm just going to pick up. I just want to also mention the budget is going on actively, and I'll be giving your board a brief update about where we are with that later in the agenda.
Hey, Don, I see that Commissioner Bangs has her hand up.
Okay.
I'm just curious, will the chair and I be gone on the evening of the 26th?
Yes,
Okay.
you will be gone, and so we'll still have a meeting. It'll be a pretty light agenda for that
Okay.
for that night. So
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Okay, Don. Oh, Commissioner Wakua. Commissioner Wakua, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. We just got an email from Monica that it looks like she tried to join the meeting as a presenter but didn't, so she might be somewhere in the matrix if somebody needs to let her into the meeting.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. There's Monica. Okay, do we have any questions on the rolling agenda? Don, anything more that we want to discuss?
excuse me, Chair.
Anything more we want to discuss on the agenda going forward?
No, I think that'll be good. I have some more topics I want to talk about as part of the budget update, but for the agenda, that's it.
Okay. All right. Thanks. We'll move on to the next item, which is the Department of Public Health Modernization and Equity Plan. This is on page 2 of the agenda. And I know we've got Kelly Broughton, our interim public health director, Jill Quackenbush, deputy public health director, and Lisa Schuyler, our health promotion supervisor, all joining us. So who would like to start?
I'll start.
Kelly. All right,
I'll
Kelly.
start, Chair. Thank you, Chair, members of the board. I just wanted to take this opportunity to kind of reintroduce public health in a way where our hope is, as we continue this transition, to be a little more involved in communication and transparency with the board. So I just wanted to let you know to expect some continued work sessions in the future, aside from the one we have today that will be presented by Jill and Lisa Schuyler. And of course, probably some additional Friday updates from the county manager that we'll share with him to pass along as well. There's a lot going on in public health, and we understand our role is to be better about keeping the board updated and giving you guys kind of a clearer picture as to what we're seeing, trends in our community, and how we're collaborating with the North Coast. So I appreciate this opportunity, and I'm going to pass it on to Jill, who's going to talk more about modernization and health equity.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly, Chair Cuela, members of the board. Really happy to be here today and to engage and start talking to you about public health modernization. I want to make sure that you do have the slide of the modernization wheel that we provided, because I'll be talking about that, and want to make sure you're able to follow and see that. But so public health modernization means that everyone in Oregon and Clatsop County can expect the same public health protections that are critical to their health and the health of future generations. And these include the foundational areas, which in that sphere that you have, the different colored quadrant areas, responding to communicable disease and new health threats, looking at health promotion and prevention. And this includes access to healthy food, things like vaping prevention. It includes, and then we have environmental health, concerns around safe food and water and addressing that. And then access to clinical preventative services, such as immunizations. And the Clatsop County Board of Commissioners is the local public health authority as outlined in the Oregon Revised Statute, Chapter 431. And our role as the Department of Public Health is to ensure that on your behalf and keeping with your mission and your strategic plan, that we work collaboratively with the authority to ensure that we have what is called the foundational capabilities to address those 4 areas. So in very, very tiny print around the circle is those capabilities that public health is required to have. And those include assessment and epidemiology, emergency preparedness and response, communications, policy planning and leadership, and then community partnerships to ensure health equity and that all have access to health. So to meet these foundational areas, as well as the capabilities, Clatsop County is projected to receive about $395,000 for fiscal year 25-26 from the Oregon Health Authority. And this work is not done. We don't do this haphazardly or in a vacuum. It requires continual, both formal and informal community assessment and planning. Some of the informal assessment is conducted by feedback loops with our community partners through collaborations and coalitions, such as the Behavioral Health Resource Network, the Community Health, which is BURN, Community Health Advocacy and Response Team, CHART, our Northwest Regional Early Learning Hub, and the Columbia Pacific CCO. But our modernization also, funding also requires some formal planning. And right now, those include 3 specific plans. One is an all hazards plan, and this is the public health piece, the inclusion in the county's emergency operation plan. And so we partner with Justin and the crew at our emergency management department for our inclusion in that. We also have a climate and health adaptation plan, which addresses emerging health threats related to our natural environment. So an example there is like how we might provide messaging or communication regarding wildfire smoke. And then finally, what we're here to talk to you about today is our health equity plan. And in 2021, Clatsop County collaborated with our regional partners in Tillamook and Columbia counties on a health equity assessment. And it's been a while, but our next step is to identify how we can address some of the key takeaways from that assessment. And with that, and I can pass it to Lisa Schuyler. And as Kelly mentioned, she's our health promotion supervisor, and she is the department's lead on this plan.
Thank you, Jill, and thank you, Chair Quayla and members of the board for having me here today. I'm new to this role as health promotion supervisor. I've been in it since July of last year, but I've been with the department since 2018, and more recently, I also started helping with the health equity planning. So Reed Group was the contractor who assisted us with writing our assessment or doing our assessment and writing our report on that in 2021. And we have decided to bring them back on as a contractor to help us with the planning process as well. They're experienced with public health assessment and planning, and we feel confident in having them assist us with this. The regional assessment with Tillamook and Columbia, that included data from the state, regional, and county level, and it looked at it in a lot of different ways. It also included feedback from the community, and it had three main takeaways, which is on the second slide of the information that we included in your packet. So with that community feedback, the three takeaways were increase affordable housing, increase access to health and social services, and address poverty. So I'm sure that none of those takeaways are surprising to any of the commissioners, because they're all things that I know that you've been discussing. We've seen it in your strategic plans. When we're looking at these takeaways, I think that there's definitely the increased access to health and social services, which is within the scope of public health. So we're going to be identifying what kind of strategies we want to include in our plan based on what these priorities were that were found in the assessment. And that might be one that we decide to focus on more heavily, as well as just kind of looking at address poverty. We have some programs that do that as well in public health. And if there's increased affordable housing that is being addressed in the community through other county departments and community organizations. Moving on to the planning roadmap, which is the next slide that we included for you. Now that we've done this assessment, we have our key takeaways. We're moving into looking at what it is that we want to include in our plan. So we consider ourselves right now to be at that first dot on the roadmap, which is the January, February project initiation and planning. And this plan, if you follow the roadmap all the way to the end, is due to Oregon Health Authority. We have to have it completed, but it can be, once again, it can be adapted over time, even after that June 30th deadline. But we want to have something we can submit to Oregon Health Authority by June 30th, 2025. That's when they'd like us to have a draft. It looks like Jill's going to share it. Thank you, Jill. The next dot is the interest holder engagement and coordination. So you as our Board of Health are definitely part of that interest holder engagement. We'd like to include the Human Services Advisory Council as well in our planning process. And we'd also like to include community partners as well. And we've identified a key core planning team at this point as well. That includes Jen Munson from Emergency Management. We want to make sure that emergency management was included because they are now administering the Public Health Emergency Preparedness and Response Program in close coordination with us. So having their input on this plan was really important to us. Jen Benoit, our Public Information Officer from Public Affairs, is also part of the core planning team, which is important because when you're talking about access, then you're also wanting to make sure that communication is included in something that you're thinking about when it comes to access. And then Jill and myself are also on that core planning team. We would like to, once we have a draft of the plan, sometime in May, since we'd like to submit it in June, we'd like to bring it back to the Board of County Commissioners so that you can give us feedback on the draft. At this point in the process, we would welcome feedback or comments or, we completed our assessment in 2021. Now we're in 2025. If you have any additional priorities that you'd like us to look at, we would welcome all that feedback from you now and make sure that we include it in our planning process. Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate very much this opportunity to provide input. I'd like to give it thoughtful consideration. When and if I have comments, to whom should they be addressed?
You can address them to Kelly as our main point of contact, and then he will make sure that the rest of the staff that need to be included in it get the message. Thank you.
Any other additional questions or comments? Anything additional from Commissioner Webb?
Thank you. I'd like to first express that this was the most homework I've ever had to do for a commission meeting. And I really welcomed it because we haven't talked about these issues in a very long time. And since the 2021 report, which we did talk at length about, but it was a different staff then. And so I really welcome all of you smart people from the health department in this discussion, because we haven't done it enough recently. One of the issues that I would really love to see have more status is the issue of climate change, which is, if nothing else, perhaps a public health issue. And I'd love to see it have more of a standing in our strategic planning process, but also more on your plate. And I'm really, really happy that you formed a partnership with our emergency management folks, because they're dealing with both immediate issues, of course, and also long-term climate change issues. And so I'm really happy that you all are talking to each other. This was about as much meat as I have ever seen in preparation for a commission meeting. I certainly haven't memorized the whole process, but I'm really looking forward to working with you all more closely than we have in the past. Because this is such important work. This is it's probably among the most important work that we do. And the package I felt was beautifully put together. Really thought-provoking. I probably have to sit down with Kelly for a couple of hours and go through all the notes and questions that I have on it. But thank you so much. This has been so thought-provoking. It's really been engaging. And it's a wonderful roadmap for us for the future. So thank you so much for all your hard work on this. This is just spectacular. I think it lays out a framework for us that shame on us if we don't pay attention to it, especially after all of your hard work. So thank you so much. And I really look forward to engaging in this process. Thank you. Thank you,
Commissioner Webb. Kelly?
Thanks, Chair Aquila. Commissioner Webb, I just wanted to point out that one of our next steps is and part of modernization as well as the climate adaptation plan that is also in the process of being looked at and considered moving forward. So that will be one of the next work sessions we bring to the board.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. Commissioner Banks?
I just want to appreciate your mention of the strategic plan, as it has the guidance from all 5 commissioners, and I feel it addresses the climate change concern adequately within the strategic plan. And I am grateful that you guys are using that as your guiding document as you pursue all of the things that you are pursuing. And I too appreciate all of the hard work. I know that there has been changes in staff, and it looks like everybody has just taken off at a dead run. And so I do appreciate that, but I also do appreciate your adherence to the strategic plan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks. Do we have any other comments or questions? Well, I would echo my fellow commissioners. This is the product of a lot of hard work and research. Appreciate Kelly, Jill, and Lisa. Thank you for bringing this to us today. And again, appreciate all that you're doing. Any other questions? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to our next item. Thank you so much, you guys. Appreciate it. Next is the legislative update. County Manager Don Boone.
Chair Creeley, members of the board, thank you. I was going to have Amanda go ahead and kick off with an overview of what's been happening over the last week and what is coming up in the coming days. So,
hello, Chair Quayla, members of the board. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So one of the bills that has been a big priority for the board is the TLT bill that LOC has been leading the charge on, and we've been a part of. That's HB 3556. And CFM let us know that it has been tentatively scheduled for a public hearing and work session mid-March. And so the goal of that, it'll be kind of a limited testimony is the goal, because essentially it's to move it into the House Committee on Revenue, because it's currently in the House Committee on Emergency Management, General Government, and Veterans. So we'll touch base again more as that gets closer in terms of kind of providing that testimony. And it's just to express support for the bill and that it should be moved to the appropriate committee. Do you have any questions?
Commissioner Bangs.
Not so much a question, but just a thought. I do feel like in that limited testimony period for that particular bill, if one of us would show up as a commissioner and testify, I would imagine it would be chair if he is available. But I think it would really behoove us to have a personal note or a personal face attached to it in that testimony period. Thank you.
Agreed, Commissioner Banks. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was in the Capitol yesterday, so the AOC Governance, Revenue, and Economic Development Committee may have a role in this as well, just so you know. There may be a presence from this board in that regard.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Anything else at this time? Ready to move on, Amanda?
Thank you. The next bill I just kind of wanted to highlight is the CAFA bill, and that's HB 3518. And this is the one that the Oregon Association of County Tax Collectors, I always forget all the acronyms, OACTC. So this is their bill that they've been leading the charge on. And this is about funding those services. And so just kind of wanted to highlight that because a public hearing is coming up on the 11th. And OACTC has asked county assessors to just be there in person and support. And so Heidi will be going down, our assessment and taxation director, to provide support. And there'll be some county assessors that will be providing testimony in support of that bill. And we're getting a little bit more information kind of on the specifics, and we can provide that to the board. Don, I don't know if maybe the best venue for that might be the Friday update, which I can do, or I don't know if you want to.
That's fine. If I could, Chair Creel, members of the board, just expand on that a little bit. This has been a really generational challenge, which is how to fund the county systems that support the tax collection process. And the state used to contribute more to the system, and over time, the state's contribution has been less, and the county's contribution has had to grow. That obviously is a concern for counties. We have a number of counties that are really have more distressed tax systems because of staffing issues and local funding limitations. So this has been a priority for counties for a long time, and it's gratifying to see a bill, you know, maybe getting a little momentum forward. Like all bills, though, you don't know what's going to happen until sine die, but I think this is a positive note. So I'm sure that all the counties will be actively engaged in this, as will AOC and others. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, County Manager. Okay, Amanda?
Thank you, Chair. Another bill I just wanted to highlight is HB 3175. And this is one that we've talked about before. And it has to do with removing the cap on fees having to do with public land survey corners. And that one has been moving through the House. It has its third reading scheduled for tomorrow, and then will be making its way to the Senate, which is pretty exciting. Another bill, I just kind of wanted to highlight some fair bills. There were a public hearing today, this morning, and the one that we are tracking most closely and kind of as a priority for the Oregon Fair Association is HB 2304. Another one that was involved in that public hearing is HB 2145. And the main thing with that bill, and there's kind of a handful of bills that association is working on and kind of gaining momentum in, and that's eliminating the cap established 20 years ago and fully funding 1% of lottery funds to county fairs, with 90% of the funds going to county fairgrounds and 10% of the funds going to state fairgrounds. So staff are working on drafting a letter for your board for review. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that and just to keep an eye out. The deadline for submitting that written testimony will be Friday at 8 a.m. So we're going to try to hopefully wrap that up tomorrow. So I'll be sending out a letter at least by the end of today. So just to let you know, look out for that one.
Mr. Banks?
I'm curious, it would also probably behoove the Fair Board to enter something similar during that time. Is it possible to assist Kyle in constructing a all Fair Board letter, or at least a letter that their chair can sign?
I'll touch base with him. We were talking about, he's helping me with the content for the board letter. So I'll ask him kind of if that has already been discussed, but at least getting the chair to sign, yeah.
All right. Any other additional questions, comments? Amanda?
And just some public health modernization related bills, since we touched on that today at the work session. One of the bills that we're tracking is HB 2954, and that would provide that would support providing addiction prevention services. CLO, the Oregon Coalition of Local Health Officials, is the one that kind of developed that bill and is leading the charge. And it would essentially provide $25 million. It's asking for that for each biennium. And that would to hire at least one person to work exclusively on prevention within each county, and develop or expand school and community prevention programs, and a few other things, but those are kind of the main highlights of the bill. And then with that is the OHA's budget bill, which is HB 5025. And one of the POPs or POP 410, it has to do with public health modernization. And with that, it's increased funding of $50 million to support public health modernization. So we're tracking that one as well.
Great.
And then just the last things that I wanted to highlight. I've sent your board 2 letters for review. One of them is a letter of support for HB 2224, and that's the one that Commissioner Thompson provided testimony on yesterday. So the deadline for that written testimony is tomorrow at 3 p.m. So there's a few commissioners I'm still kind of waiting to hear back on. So if you can just let me know if you approve that letter. And with that was also a letter for SB 916. And that deadline for the written testimony is tomorrow at 8 a.m. So if you can just get back to me today on both of those letters, that would be really helpful. Do you have any questions about, Commissioner
I see
Thompson?
Commissioner
Sorry.
Thompson.
Thank you. Well, appreciate the support, and colleagues, I urge you to read these letters and support them. Testimony yesterday resulted in, I would say, head-scratching response from people opposed to the -3 amendments, which would only give counties the right to have representation on CCOs operating within their boundaries. Because we're the Public Health Board and the Mental Health Board, it's for me, it's a no-brainer that we should have representation there. But the people who have control of the money are not eager to give it up. So I would appreciate very much your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Bangs?
Just wanted to make note of my testimony. I think it was yesterday or the day before, I can't remember, regarding support for the bill for transparency from the Department of Forestry in regards to a sustainable harvest level. And it's been fortunate that Oregon Wild and AOC staff has been at the table drafting an amendment that hopefully everyone will find palatable. And so Council of Forest Trust Lands is in support of this bill, and so I just wanted transparency that I showed up at the as a Council of Forest Trust Land member and testified as such yesterday or the day before. And then I asked Amanda to add 2 bills for childcare to our dashboard, and then Amanda, I sent you an additional email today that I received from Eva Manderson yesterday. After our childcare meeting, that are potential bills for us to keep an eye on and potentially support. I haven't read them yet, so it's not a stamp of approval or support from me. It's just I'm passing something forward for the county staff to look at. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Bangs. Do we have any other comments, questions? Amanda, do you have anything additional?
Nope. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And again, I appreciate your reminder about looking for emails where you need letters of support or you need to have approvals. I know I often miss them, so encourage all the commissioners to go back and make sure that if there are some emails from Amanda or Dawn, Monica, that need to have the commission approved, because there is a tight timeline in order to submit. Just make sure we're reviewing each day to make sure that we're getting those reviewed and approved. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much, Amanda. Appreciate all the hard work. And next item is the budget update. I'll turn it over to Dawn.
Yes, thank you, Chair Quayla, members of the board. This is just going to be a narrative update. I don't have any charts and graphs. We're still early in the budget process, but I did want to just provide kind of an overview of where we are. Obviously, developing the budget is one of the many important things that the county does, but it becomes, the fiscal roadmap for the county that expresses the board's priorities, staffing levels, expenditure levels, all linked, to the strategic plan and the board's long-term financial plan. I'm just going to harken back a little bit to what was discussed during the last budget cycle, because in the budget message, I identified a number of headwinds that were really influencing the county's financial performance. And I'm just going to go over those a little bit, because not surprisingly, these are still where the headwinds are coming from going into the 25-26 budget. So the headwinds that I mentioned before are inflation, still a factor. It's come down a little bit. Second was the impacts and the limitations on some of our local revenue sources. To be specific, I mentioned AV growth, which, as you are aware, AV growth year over year is generally limited to 3%. On top of that, we get any additional AV that comes off of new construction, but typically AV growth falls between 3 and 4% every year. And obviously, when inflation is above that, it actually means we are losing ground, since property taxes is one of our largest revenue sources in the general fund. Another revenue source that I mentioned was timber. We still are unsure exactly what is going to happen with the HCP. We certainly don't know about revenue replacement yet. And so that's still a question mark. We haven't seen the impacts to our current timber revenues, which we know will come in future years, given the approval of the HCP. The other is TLT. We've had a lot of conversations about TLT, the impacts of tourism on our service and service levels. We're working hard collectively, your board, AOC, LOC, and our lobbying team to try to move the needle on that. I think there's a lot of support for it, but it's still going to be a steep slope. We strategically developed a county ordinance because your board does control what the rate is for local TLT. So we did prepare an ordinance. We had the first hearing, and staff, and I think your board, are ready to take whatever action the county needs to take once we find what the legislature may or may not do for TLT. So I think TLT is the one that we probably are seeing a little bit more progress on. But obviously there's still some challenges there. The other things that I mentioned was cost of healthcare and PERS. Still, obviously, those cost centers increase much quicker than inflation. And then I also mentioned jail healthcare. So, and jail healthcare is a huge cost center. And as you know, our jail is not full of healthy people, but we have a lot of healthcare needs in our jail. And that is paid dollar per dollar from the county general fund. So as I look into 24-25, one of the conversations that we had with the budget committee at the time was how much of the reserve should we be spending down every year given these uncertainties. And there was general agreement from the budget committee and the board that as we move forward, we should limit further reductions in the reserve amounts, knowing that the uncertainty is a greater risk. And so I just want to give you a little perspective on fiscal year 24-25, which will end June 30th of this year. Right now, we are estimating that we'll probably go into the reserves by about $1 million, which is far less than what we budgeted for. And as I mentioned during the budget hearing, we don't spend 100% of what's appropriated through the budget process. There are savings that come back to the county every year because of staff vacancies, under expenditures in materials and services, and all that accrues back into the reserve. So, but we will go into the reserves about $1 million. What that means, though, is that the reserve at the year end will be sitting at about 39%. And I just want to reiterate what the board policy is, because the board policy is a reserve that's a minimum of 20%, but the range is between 20 and 30%. And the reason why we increased it up to 30% was these uncertainties. So even at the end of this year, we will be sitting at about 39%. So we remain in a positive position. We want to continue as we go into 25-26 budget to maintain service and service levels. But what we do know is that these constraints are still with us. And so what that's going to require us to do as we go into 25, 26 is to continue to pursue revenue sources to the fullest extent. The House Bill 3518, which Amanda mentioned, which deals with assessment and taxation, is one of those efforts. That would be general fund money that offsets some of our costs. But others are the TLT and the fact that we spend a lot of time on our fee schedule. And we've had some conversations with the board about this recently, about not subsidizing through general fund dollars, things that are really, should be standalone fees. And so we continue to look at the revenue side. We've been evaluating positions as they become vacant. We've been strategically deciding to fill positions, delay positions, or to eliminate positions. And so that process is ongoing. We'll have more information for your board about how all that plays out as we get into the final phases of the budget development process, but there will be fewer staff going into next year. There's no layoffs. We're very sensitive about workloads. So I think we are threading the needle on all those concerns, but we are going to have to do things differently. And so off of that, part of what we have been looking at is ways that we can restructure the organization to garner efficiencies and to reduce costs. You heard a presentation from Public Health this morning, and Public Health and Juvenile are part of that goal to reorganize and to create efficiencies within the organization. We had the opportunity, because of a resignation of a department director, to really assess what the best way to organize some of these smaller departments were. And so part of what I discussed early on was to create a merged department of these currently independent departments into one, and that would be a Department of Health and Human Services type of an entity, which would have juvenile, public health, and it could have other things like the behavioral health contracts. But that way we can create some of those efficiencies within how an organization is managed, how we budget and we support the administrative part of the organization. And I think it just streamlines things so that we can really provide staff with the leadership, the opportunities, the training that they require for success in the organization. And so that's one example, is this public health juvenile merger into a consolidated department. But there are also areas we've been looking at where we may take a specific program out of one department and put it into another department because it makes sense from a staffing perspective, from a backup perspective, from a training perspective. And so you may see some of those also as we go through the budget. So part of what my message is we're looking at all the different things that fall under kind of the organizational opportunity realm to position us for the long term, because these headwinds are not going to necessarily go away. And so we need to really structure the organization so that it's sustainable, it's still providing the vital services that the community needs, it's fiscally prudent, fiscally responsible, living within our resources, but is also flexible enough to continually evolve as things continually change. Because I don't see any version of the county going forward where change isn't just part of what we are challenged by. So I think that when I think about where we are, we will develop a budget that for the end of fiscal year 25-26 does not require any reserves. So that's the budget we are putting together right now. We're going to maintain those reserves at that 39% range, knowing that there's still a lot of uncertainties. As we go through, though, and we find out what happens with TLT, what may or may not happen with timber revenues, and whether the state helps us on some of these other expenses, like with assessment and taxation, we will revisit what those assumptions are and there may be an opportunity where we decide to spend down some of that reserve because we don't need to be reserved at such a high level. But at this point, I think reserving at that high level still makes sense because we still don't know what the future holds with a lot of these areas. I just want to give a brief heads up for kind of how we've been approaching the budget, generally speaking, for the departments. And it's not even a status quo budget. Most of the departments will have expenditure reductions. And again, we aren't doing it across the board. We're doing it prudently to where we're still providing service and service levels, but there are always opportunities for us to eke out some of these economies. What that means for the board, though, just when you see the board's proposed budget, we did factor in a COLA for the board stipend, like we always do. The stipend's actually approved by the budget committee, but we wanted to have some kind of a placeholder in there so we can figure out where we generally are. And then for the travel, training, and reimbursements, we have budgeted at the same level as we have this year. And again, that's partly just, part of just the fact that that's what the budget policies that were adopted by the board, kind of that was the direction for the whole organization. So my assessment is that we have a really solid forecasting system in place now. We have really solid staff work. We have an organization that is supporting the direction your board gives us through the budget policies and through the long-term financial plan. We know where we are. We know where we're going. We just don't exactly know all the different influences that are going to get us there. Budgeting in the public sector is always a challenge. If you look at, and you talk to a lot of other counties right now, there's a lot of them that are under extreme strain. We're not under extreme strain, but we are under strain. And so I think, I have a lot of confidence in where we are, where we're going to go, but I just want to be very transparent about there's still these same headwinds. And so we are going to get to where we need to be this year, and then we'll take next year once we get clarity with the legislature and see what happens with the economy as we move forward. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Don. I see Commissioner Webb.
Yeah, thank you. I put that up probably a little too early, Don, but thank you very much. But in my sick bed, reading through what's going on in the legislature and else in the world, I thought I saw something, and I don't know if Amanda's still on this call, but I thought I saw something that there was an initiative in the legislature that was going to ask the state to modify the rule about OHP not covering people in jails. Is that something that you are familiar with? Because that certainly would help our budgeting issues a great deal.
Yes.
And is that real, or was that something I dreamed in my whatever?
Well, Chair Quila, members of the board, Commissioner Webb, I think that this has been a topic that has been discussed for a long time. And part of what has to be done is there has to be congressional approval, at the DC level for actually allowing Medicaid.
Oh, because it's Medicaid, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
to
right.
include that. So
Yeah.
the state has been waiting. They have requested, and they have been waiting for that congressional approval. But as we know, there's just a lot of uncertainties with Congress right now, and so I'm not thinking that that's going to happen anytime soon, given the discussions about Medicaid. But
Okay. I didn't realize that link, of course, with Medicaid. So I'm sorry. I just, that would, yeah.
yeah, it is a huge issue for our jails because it would make it would make it a lot more cost effective if we could access.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So is that, have we talked with our Congress people about that?
Yes, we have.
Oh.
We've talked about it for many years, and it's just,
Okay.
it just hasn't, it hasn't taken root yet. So,
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Banks?
I just wanted to make note that I appreciate the thoughtfulness that our staff is going through in order to reduce our spending in our budget. I think fiscal responsibility in our current climate is by far the best choice. And I also just wanted to make note that I appreciate that we didn't dip too far into our reserves this last year. And I like having those reserves right now where they are at, or as close to as possible to where they are at, because I feel like it gives us that runway we're always talking about, or that wiggle room that we're always talking about, in order to pivot to solve the problems facing us. And so I just wanted to say thank you to the rest of my fellow commissioners in supporting that fiscal responsibility, because I'm looking at neighboring counties and they are struggling. And I'm looking at my fellow CFTLC counties, and the conversations are surrounding the fact that they are struggling. And so I'm glad that although we are under pressure, we are not to the point of completely struggling. So thank you.
Any other comments, questions? I would echo Commissioner Banks' comments. I completely agree. I feel full confidence in our staff and our team year after year in the way that they have approached our budget. And I think these are very sensible considerations and a strategy going forward to make sure that we are not going to be in a crisis like other counties with the uncertainty that's present right now, and what revenues the county might see over the next year. So again, kudos to Andy Sullivan, to Monica, to everyone on the finance team for their diligence and hard work, and of course our county manager. Any other comments or questions? All right, we'll go ahead. It's County Manager, you had a couple of more items.
no, Chair, I was just going to mention that obviously we'll be coming back to your board with all the specifics about what I've just spoken about. I just didn't want the board to be surprised once the budget comes out about what you might see. So anything in the budget will support what I just discussed. So
Yes, and the update is much appreciated. All right, we don't have anything else on our agenda. So we will go ahead and adjourn for the day. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Take care. Thanks.